A reading from the Gospel according to Luke. Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all the things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. He said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. And then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" And he asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But when we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. And yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. The word of the Lord. Today, on this day, we celebrate and we remember Saint Philip. Saint Philip, who was one of the first deacons of the church by our tradition. It is said that in Acts of the Apostles, chapter 6, when the bishops had been entrusted with taking care of the people, but people needed more help than just those leaders of the church were able to do, that the apostles commissioned the first 7 deacons of the church to be in charge of helping administer to those who were in need in the community, their physical needs. We remember this to this day now as being the same call that we have for deacons in the church today, to be people whose primary focus is to tend to the people, often with one foot in the church world and one foot out in the world outside our walls, and being a bridge between the church and the world. So Philip was one of those first people, along with Stephen, near and dear to me, of course, one of the first deacons, Stephen, who was also the first martyr of the church. You see, Stephen refused when he was brought before the Sanhedrin to revoke his faith or to renounce his faith, and as a result was stoned to death. Now, where this comes in for Philip is very important to me in understanding him as a saint, because you see, it would have been really easy for Stephen, as a first of the deacons, to not necessarily have known exactly what the stakes were, to give up his life to serve those around him. But you see, it certainly was obvious to Philip. Philip, who had seen what had happened to Stephen, and yet chose to faithfully remain a deacon in the church. He didn't let that dissuade him, even once he became fully aware of the cost. Moreover, Philip is said to have then gone out to tend to the Samaritans, the people of Samaria, for whom they had not always had the best relationship. But Philip was called to a people in need. And so he went out to the Samaritans, and he served. He healed, he fed, he taught, he nurtured. Not because he didn't know what it might cost him, but rather because he had seen Stephen. He knew what it would cost him. He knew what it would take of him. And he said, "Yes, Lord, but this is who you're calling me to be." And so he faithfully pursued it. And that for me is a remarkable saint to follow. I hope a lesson all of us can take from this is to realize we are called to deep and important work to be there as the church for communities in need, even if they're strangers to us, even if maybe we've sometimes seen them as our enemy. And even if we see that there might be some cost to open up ourselves and be the church to the world, even when it might cost us greatly, it's who we're called to be. And so let's be inspired, let's be strengthened and comforted and challenged by the example of Philip, the saint and a first deacon in the church. Amen.